Hey everybody, welcome off the shelf board game reviews. This is a YouTube channel dedicated to the tabletop gaming hobby, and this is a video looking at the City of the Great Machine. Now, City of the Great Machine is a 2 to 4 player competitive hidden movement game where one player is going to take the role of the Great Machine, which his only goal is to get its master plan into play to reprogram all of society because it's decided that mankind is its own worst enemy. While the other player or players is taking on the role of the revolutionaries. Now they're trying to start riots and start a revolution to bring down the regime of the Great Machine and let the people know that this dystopian future is not the best place for mankind. And this video is part of a series of videos looking at this game. Now in this specific video, I'm going to give you my review of the game itself, but if what you're looking for is some sample gameplay, a tutorial, or an actual quick overview of the game, check out the other videos in the series. Come on back after the break for a review of this 2 to 4 player hidden movement game. Now, City of the Great Machine is a 2 to 4 player hidden movement game. Now, if you're not familiar with hidden movement games, there's a good pedigree of great hidden movement games that have been throughout the board game history. You can look at classic games such as Fury of Dracula, games such as Spectre Ox, or games such as Letter from Whitechapel. But the basic idea of a hidden movement game is one player is going to be playing one role, while the other player or players are going to be taking on the opposing team. And the basic idea in a hidden movement game is one player is doing all their actions secretly behind the screen without the other player knowing what's going on. And then the players must get into the minds of the other team, try to anticipate moves, try to predict moves, try to lay traps, try to play a game of cat and mouse and try to figure out what exactly is going on while working towards their grand goal of achieving whatever it is they need for victory. Whether in games such as Fury of Dracula, where it's Dracula just trying to cause fear and dread across all the country of Europe, while the vampire hunters are trying to hunt him down and put a stake through his heart. Whether it's Letters from Whitechapel, one player is playing Jack the Ripper and he's trying to hide from all of Scotland Yard, or whether you have a game such as City of the Great Machine, where one player is controlling the Great Machine while the other players are doing their darndest to stop this horrible machine from bringing about its future of mankind, where all mankind has been reprogrammed, because mankind, in the Great Machine's opinion, is its own worst enemy and it knows what is best for mankind. Total oblivion of our own free will. Now, like most hidden movement games, one player is going to take the role of one team while the other players are going to take the role of the other team. And in this game, one player is taking the role of the Great Machine while the other players are taking the role of revolutionaries. Now, what is interesting about this game, which is so different from a lot of your average standard hidden movement games, is this is kind of taking the hidden movement game and kind of spun it around a little bit and added in a very unique twist to the game. Because in most of your hidden movement games, the one player who's controlling the one team, the solo team, versus all the other players, they're generally speaking, they're always the ones who are doing the hidden movement. For example, I'm going to reference a whole bunch of other hidden movement games so you can kind of get the idea of the difference here. But for example, in the game of Fury of Dracula, one player is controlling Dracula and they're doing all the hidden movement. Letters from Whitechapel, one player is playing Jack and they're controlling all the hidden movement. Spectre Ops, one player is playing the hidden Spectre Operative and they're doing all their hidden movement while the other players are trying to track them down. This game takes that idea and puts a very interesting spin on it, because in this game, the players playing the many are the ones who are doing the hidden movement. Because in this game, one player controls the Great Machine who is doing all their movement out in the open, after all the other players controlling the revolutionists do all their hidden movement in secret. And that's what's a nice, interesting spin on the game. Instead of the many hunting the one is now hunting down the many. Now, a lot of your hidden movement games, the way this is going to work is one player or players, in the case of this game, who are doing their hidden movement are going to do secretive movements, and usually that's usually referenced by playing cards. And these players are going to play their cards face down to lock in their moves. It's almost kind of like a program movement game. In this game, every single one of the players is going to control a revolutionary, and the revolutionary is going to get their cards. And what we're going to do as revolutionaries is we're all going to place our cards face down. Once all the revolutionaries have played all their cards face down, they've locked in their movement. They can't change the movement. Those are permanent moves that they must do on their turn. Once all these players have locked in their movements after discussing, making tactics, strategizing, working together, then the Great Machine is going to start activating its turn. And this Great Machine does all its movements through its servants. Now the great machine is never actually on the board. It does all its actions through its servants, and servants carry out its actions, whether it's going to different locations on the board, changing things up, adding directives, adding different special powers, giving them different abilities. The basic idea is they're going to do all their actions through their servants, and then once all the servants have done all their actions, placed their movements, and done their actions, then the hidden movement team reveals their actions, and they must perform their actions. And that's the basic idea of most of your hidden movement games. And this game follows that pretty standard formula, but again, like I said, it's already starting to add a little bit of twists and a little bit of turns to the standard idea of your average hidden movement, hidden trader game. Now this game does have a lot of unique mechanics that are a little bit more unique to the hidden trader, hidden movement game. I've already mentioned one big one where the one player is actually one doing their moves in the open, and the many players are the ones who are doing their moves by doing hidden actions, which is a nice role reversal. But this game does take a little bit of inspiration from more of the classic game Fury of Dracula, because in this game the players have the ability to actually interact with the other players. It's not really a cat and mouse game like a lot of the other hidden movement games such as Whitechapel, Spectre Ops, and everything along those lines. This one has a lot more player interaction, again taking a lot more inspiration from the classic game of Fury of Dracula, because your moves and your actions also allow you to interact and influence the other players, and actually the things you do can really much hamper the opposing force, interact with them, and also change their tactics, change their strategies by doing a good amount of intrigue and deception and mind games, which is something I really always enjoy by hidden role and hidden movement games, because the basic idea of these games is the one team has to get into the mind of the other players. And this game has some interesting mechanics that kind of make some of the gameplay open and kind of really match the theme of the game. One of the things that's really cool about this game is the heroes, the revolutionists, must make all their plans in front of the Great Machine, which kind of represents the fact that the Great Machine controls the city. It's part of the inner workings of this great floating city, so it knows what's going on. Its spies are everywhere. So the heroes must make their plans in front of the Great Machine. That doesn't mean that they have to be obvious about what their actions are, because they can simply take their hand of cards and they can look over at their partners and say, I'm going to do this. I need you to do this action right here. Can you get over here? Can you do this? And you can do those things. But the hidden role of this is the Great Machine is listening to those things. But the nice thing about this is the players can be deceptive. They don't have to actually do this. You can kind of make symbols, make signs, and do other things that be very deceptive with the other player, which is why I really like hidden movement games, because there's kind of a deceptive way the game is playing. It's a lot of mind games, a lot of double speak, and a lot of double talk, and it's something I really, really love about these games. Now, this game itself is very, very asymmetric, which is something I really, really enjoy about this game. Every time you play this game, there are going to be a lot of variables set up in the way the game is going to play, which adds a tremendous amount of replay to the game. You can take the fact that you look at this game, the game comes with 6 revolutionaries, and every time we play the game, we're going to pick 3 of those 6 revolutionaries, which adds a lot to the replay of the game. You look at the board, and every time you play this game, you're going to set the board, and you can do a random setup if you like, or you can use one of the preset setups for the game, using one of the preset maps that come with the game. More than welcome to do that. You as a group of players can decide what a setup you're going to have, or you can even do a random setup. There's actually rules in the game that tell you how to do a complete random setup just using the access cards for the game. Not only that, the game has a tremendous amount of replay in it, thanks to these city event cards. Now, every time you play the game, you're going to use 13 city event cards, and every time you play the game, you're going to have the countdown city event card, which is going to be part of every single game. But you're also going to have 6 city event level 1 cards, 6 city event level 2 cards, and there are much more than the 6 required for the game. The standard game comes with 10 of these, meaning that you're going to use 12 of 20 cards, again adding to the variety of the game. Not only that, like I said, this game is asymmetric, because not only do the heroes individually have their own powers, which are unique to every single hero, the Great Machine is also going to play asymmetrically, and asymmetrically every single time you play the game. Because while in the base game, the servants don't have any special powers, that may come with future expansions. Hopefully that'll come out, because I think that'll be very, very cool. But you as a Great Machine also have these directive cards. Now, every one of these directive cards are going to give much more power to the Great Machine. They're going to give you different abilities, different powers, and different ways you can play the game. And the interesting thing about these powers and the way these directives come out is you can only have 3 directives out at a time. And while they give you power, they also paint a target right on your back, because these directives are very powerful, meaning that the heroes, the revolutionists, are going to cancel those cards if you get out the powerful ones too quickly. and cancel directives, you don't get them back. So again, it's part of the strategy, part of the asymmetry, and part of the replay value of the game, just with all those really great things involved in the game. The game also has some additional things that make the game very interesting. For example, you have all these access cards for all the heroes. And the interesting thing about these access cards is while they allow you to move around the board for the heroes are slowly possibly going to have these actions forfeited, which means they're going to be hamstrung by the Great Machine. But on top of that, there's a very interesting mechanic right at the beginning of the game that every single player is going to lose one of those access cards, which means at the start of the game, that's one location that the heroes cannot go to. The heroes know this. The Great Machine doesn't know exactly what those locations are. So again, you kind of add to the cat and mouse of it, which is something that's really great about hidden movement games. That cat and mouse aspect of these games is such a great joy to me. And that just adds one more level, because you as a Great Machine need to look at this and go, okay, this player has been avoiding this section of the board a lot. Are they avoiding this section of the board because they can't go there? Or because the current strategy that they're working on is saying that they don't want to go to that location yet because they don't want to tip their hand. So now you get a little bit more of the mind game. And the mind game is something that I really, really like about hidden movement games. I know I've said that a lot, but that's one of my great enjoyments about these games. The verbal judo, the mind games, the back and forth, and the psychology behind these games, it's so darn enjoyable for me. Adding on to this, there's also a constant unknown board state for the Great Machine, and it's also unknown by the players, by the revolutionaries, but they're slowly unraveling the board because the board state doesn't tell you exactly which revolutionaries happen to be in which specific areas. And now to start a riot, the revolutionaries need people who are part of the famous citizenry who are willing to join the revolution. And at the beginning of the game, only level 1 people are willing to join the revolution, but as you go on, you can start getting the higher levels all the way up to nobles to the level 5 people. The trick here is you have the traders who are all part of the Great Machine's master plan. So the players are juggling back and forth where the traders are, where the low level famous citizens are, where the high level famous citizens are, and then trying to move them around the board because yes, they have the power to move these famous citizens around the board in an effort to go ahead and set up one great play to go ahead and create the riot. If they can create a riot at that location permanently has the riot. That's one less location the heroes need to worry about. It's also one less location the Great Machine needs to worry about, because you can't have 2 riots in 2 locations, and it adds another level to the game. Because once we have a riot in a location, these famous citizens are going to stay face up, which means as they move around, the Great Machine knows where these famous citizens are, and the Great Machine can start arresting these and sending them to jail, which means their face value is going to be hidden from the other players. If they come back out by being freed by the rebellion, which can happen, they're going to come back on the board, and we're not going to know exactly which one is going to come back on the board. Will that be another trader? Will that be the level 1? Will that be the level 5? We don't know. But again, that adds the replay and the variety of the game, because the board state is constantly changing, making this game extremely tactical, but very strategic, because you have to be playing a tactical game along with a very strategic game, and always being mindful of the long game when you play this game, because there are so many things that can be red herrings in this game, which can make you focus on the tactical level of the game, which is something you don't want to be doing when you're playing this game, and it can add to the deception, because it's very easy to fall prey to the tactical level with the city event cards. It's very easy to fall prey to the tactical level with the citizens and the famous citizens. It's also easy to fall prey with the tactical level with the way the Great Machine is building up their engine. But again, as the heroes, you must look at the long-term goal, which is to create 3 riots and bring down the regime of the Great Machine. Another cool thing about the game is very modular, because the layout of the board is going to be laid out differently every time you play the game. Not only that, there's actually actions you can take in the game which allows you to change the layout of the board. Now, me doing that simple thing right there isn't going to cause any major changes for any of the players by moving that location right there. But if I take the Tower of Law and move the Tower of Law all the way over here, now I've changed the strategies and the tactics for all the players involved, because this is going to allow this to be more accessible or less accessible, or change things up. And again, it allows us to move things. And not only that, if we haven't moved the Tower of Law while it happens to have a level 1 citizen on it, I may be pulling that level 1 citizen away from the heroes, revolutionaries, if I do this as the Great Machine. Or if the heroes do that, they may allow them to get that even closer to the Commerce District, where they have other people who are low level, where they can go ahead and start that second revolution, that second riot, and bring them closer to winning the game. Again, it's all part of the strategies, making this game extremely tactical and extremely strategic throughout the long term. Now, like all good hidden movement games, this game does not have a lot of luck in it. This game is very tactical, very strategic, and a lot of the tactics and the strategy are going to come in from your card play, from the strategies and the tactics performed by every player. Players are going to take actions every single turn in a hope to try to figure out what their plan and get their plan for the riot going, while the Great Machine is trying to slow down the players and playing a delay game. Because basically in this game, if you can get to the 13th round, there's probably a good chance that the Great Machine is eventually going to win the game, because they're playing a long-term stalling game. They can stall the game out long enough, eventually their master plan is going to come to fruition, and it doesn't matter what the heroes are going to do, the Great Machine is going to win the game. So the heroes are facing a time pressure, which creates a tactical game where the players need to constantly reevaluate every single turn based on the actions and decisions of the Great Machine, meaning that you need to evolve your tactics every single turn, modify how you're playing, and change exactly what you're doing without being bullheaded about one specific strategy. But you can't forget about the long-term strategy, which is getting the rights to win the game itself. Now, the game does have a little bit of randomness thanks to the dice, but these dice are more of a mechanic to make sure that players don't have a fruitless turn, because this movement dice is basically used in case a player doesn't have any trust left over to do one of their actions. If they're out of trust, they can still move and still perform their actions, so no player ever feels like their turn is completely wasted, which is a nice bonus. And then the randomness of just taking out the guards, it's a randomizer, but again, it's not that big of a deal. Because if you spend 3 trust, you basically have a 2 out of 3 chance of succeeding. And basically, no matter how much trust you spend, there's always that slim chance that you may lose if you happen to roll the shield level. But again, it's not that big of a randomizer, meaning that the vast majority of this game is going to be purely strategy. There's not a lot of luck in this game, not a lot of stuff that can hinder the players except for the city cards. Now, the city cards do create a little bit of randomness, but it's a randomness that adds to the replay variety versus creating a game where the players are feeling like things are working against them. Because the nice thing about these city event cards is they come out at the beginning of the round, which means the players can plan for them. You can strategize around them. You can make decisions around these city tactic cards and go, okay guys, this city card came out right over here, which means that if we don't stop this from happening, that means the Great Machine is going to advance. While opposed, the Great Machine is looking at saying, okay, if I can make this happen, my master plan is going to advance. So it kind of creates a nice, wonderful balance, and it evolves the game. And again, it adds to the tactical level of the game, making sure this game always remains tactical and always strategic, and I think it's a very good inclusion in a hidden movement game. Now, I think it goes without saying that the components for this game are extremely fantastic. You have a wonderful amount of great artwork in this game. You have a fantastic amount of player aids. You have individual player aids for the hero actions and for the Great Machine actions. Every single player is going to get a game round card and a repositioning card that tells you about repositioning the board. The players have their powers listed on their board. These action cards tell you what you can do at these specific locations, the cost of using these locations. Everything about this game is done really well. It's designed extremely well. As a matter of fact, this is something that would be great if so many more publishers were due. But there's a fantastic rule summary on the back of the rule book. This rule summary basically tells you how to play a game. If you know how to play this game, you can take this rule summary from the back of the book and play this game. It's done so well. It breaks everything down very well. It's a fantastic player aid. And on top of that, there is a wonderful rules reference guide which goes over the individual cards, the individual hero powers. It has an FAQ. It does all these things to make sure that when you play this game, you are going to understand how to play it. And there's also a wonderful sample gameplay in the game, making sure that there is not going to be a barrier to understanding how to play this game. You're basically going to take this game, open up the box, read the rule book, look at all the fantastic components, and you're going to be able to play this game very, very well. Matter of fact, you will get to the point where you don't even need this rules summary anymore. Just you're going to have to remember the turn order. That's about the only thing you need to do, because all the cards in the game and all the components and everything available in the game makes the rules so easy to understand. It's basically an opening phase where we're gaining our resources, a player sword, we're going to player phase where we're going to play our access cards, and again, your access cards tell you what the locations happen to do and the cost you need to pay to go to those locations. Great Machine's going to activate. The cards are going to resolve. We're going to go to an end phase where we're going to clean things up, and we're going to start another round with a brand new city card. It's nice and clean and nice and efficient. And let's be serious here. Looking at this turn board that comes with the game, this is actually a really high quality board. It is nice, thick cardstock. The dials turn very well. You have multiple turning dials on this one. It's a very nice touch, and it really does match the theme of the game. This is basically a game of a dystopian future where a clockwork machine is trying to take over all society, and this nice little board has this nice clockwork look to it. It's a nice touch. Really great job on the miniatures. Great job on the components. Great job on the artwork, and a fantastic job on all the player aids. The game also has a wonderful amount of replay built in the game. You have a wonderful amount of replay due to the fact that you have way more city events than you ever need, way more heroes than you ever need in a standard game. They all have their individual powers. The asymmetry that comes from all these directive cards and the asymmetry from the layout of the board, it ensures that you're going to have a long amount of replay in this game. This is not one of those games where you're going to play once or twice and see it all. You'll see a vast majority of it in a couple plays with the city events and the directives and everything like that. but you're still going to have a couple of surprises first couple times you play the game, which also kind of leads into one of the slight negatives that some people may have about this game. This is a game that has a long learning curve. This is not one of those games where you're going to come home, open the box, play the game once and go, yep, I have a solid decision on what I think about this game. Because this game has so much extra components involved in the game. You have way more city events that are going to be involved in any single game, which means that until you go through these city event cards, a city event card is going to come out and players are going to be like, oh my gosh, you get to do that, or oh my gosh, this is going to happen. You're going to have a lot of those kind of situations the first couple of times you play the game. And that basically means that the first couple of times you play the game, you're going to have some surprises. These surprises may be positive, they may be negative, depending on which end of the surprises you happen to be on. But this basically means that this is a game that you're going to want to play multiple times. You're going to want to play multiple times just to see how the directives work out, so you can start planning for possible directives when they come out, so you can understand how the other team plays. You want to play it a couple of times to start seeing the city events, to see how they come out, so you start planning for the ways the games are going to come out. You want to play it a couple of times to see the synergies of the heroes, see how different heroes are going to cause different gameplay and different decisions every time you play the game. But you're also going to want to play the game multiple times just to understand how to play the game well. Because there are actions in this game that it's possible to play bad in this game, it's possible to play good in this game, and it's possible for one player to play really, really well in this game, especially as a great machine, and dominate the other players if the other players just don't plan for it, if they don't understand the individual strategies and the tactics and the long-term goals of the game, which is eventually to win the riot or win as a great machine by getting your master plan coming into fruition. Additionally, new players may feel a little bit overwhelmed in the early stages of the game because the game offers you so much to do, and in the early stages of the game, if you haven't played the game, it's very hard to understand what exactly do you do. As a great machinist, it's easy to understand that you're basically playing a stalling game, but as a hero, it can feel very, very overwhelming trying to figure out what you're doing in the early stages of the game because there are so many decisions. Going out there and looking at the famous citizens, going out there and trying to get some discontent, or when to go after other different things, or what to use the abilities of the main districts, when to play the cat and mouse game, when to stay away from the great machine, when to play aggressive, when to play defensive. So there's a lot of deep strategies that go involved in this game. Now, one of the great things about the game is the amount of replay and the amount of variety in the game. But again, this is definitely one of those games that you are not going to master on the first couple of plays. And I want people to understand this is a game that you want to give multiple plays to. If you're part of the one and done crowd, this is not going to be a game that you're going to enjoy. But to be perfectly honest, no hidden role or hidden movement game ever fits the one and done crowd. These are games that are going to involve with your playing group. These are games that are going to involve strategically, and these are games you're going to learn the little idiosyncrasies of the rules and the tactics and the strategies to go ahead and play better as each individual side of the game. Now, this game does play for 2 to 4 players, and this may be another thing that may be a little bit troublesome to some players, but this is something that is no different from any other hidden movement game, and every one of the hidden movement games that I really enjoy all share this in common. And this game is not unique, but the fact that this game does include 2 teams, and one team requires 1 player to play multiple players. That's no different than Fury of Dracula, no different than many other these multiple other hidden movement games, where even if you're playing the game as a 2-player game, 1 player is required to control all the heroes, or the other player is required to play the other side. Now, like I said, some people don't enjoy playing multiple roles when they play a game. I have no problem with it. I really, really enjoy it. And as a matter of fact, this game doesn't quite feel like Fury or Dracula, where it's 1 versus many, because the Great Machine, even though they are one side, they are controlling 3 other servants. So it never really feels like it's a 1 versus 1. It kind of feels like 3 versus 3, even though it was 1 controlling the 3 and the other 3 being split up among multiple players, or even 1 player. So it does feel like it balances out very, very well between 2 to 4 players. Game does have some added mechanics that are going to help make some different adjustments to the rules to make sure it's definitely balanced at 2 to 4 players. But we do have one little minor persnickety thing that you may want to be aware of before you make any decisions on this game. This game does have the ability for the Great Machine to make another player lose their turn. Now, it's in the rules allow you to do this, and I want to preface to say this is not actually a really good strategy, and it's not a really good tactic, but it kind of goes back to what I said earlier about this game. This is one of those games that you need to play many times to get very, very good at this game. Well, it's very easy for a Great Machine to see that if they go to a location with another hero, if they go ahead and perform a raid, they actually have the ability to take that player's entire turn away, which means that player is not going to be able to perform any actions. In a 2-player game, it doesn't matter if you're good or bad at the game, or experienced or inexperienced at the game. It's not going to be a big deal because you have your other 2 rebellion workers that you have to take actions with. But if you're playing a 4-player game, and if you make a very bad move and the Great Machine sends her servant in there, lands a raid, and you lose your turn, you may not feel like you have contributed to the game, and it can feel punitive when you lose your turns in this game. The good news here is that as you play this game, especially as a Great Machine, you're going to learn that taking another player's turn away is actually a terrible idea. It's actually a desperation move, and I think the rule is actually only in the game because it's a desperation move when that clock is ticking all the way up here and the Great Machine needs to shut down the hero players, otherwise they're going to lose. And from my gameplay experience, as I play the game more and more and more, I've actually realized this. But when I first played the game, I was frustrated by this mechanic. And again, once I played the game more and more, I understood it as a desperation mechanic, and it's actually not a good move. You are much more better served as a Great Machine, as every time you land a successful raid, to gain 1 point on your special grand plan track, because you have much more objective, because your grand objective is to win the game by getting that track to level 12. Never ever lose sight of your grand objective, and that's what some people may do when they're learning how to play the game. They may perform that raid and think, oh, I'm going to make you not have a move, and that player may feel like, well, I didn't get to do anything this turn, it kind of ruined my fun. But again, as you play the game more, the Great Machine is going to learn that's actually a desperation move, not a great move, and you're going to see that happen less and less and less. Again, that goes along with the fact that I said earlier, this is one of those games that you can play many, many times to get the strategies, get the tactics, and just learn how to play this game very well. The bottom line though is, did I enjoy this game? And I can definitely say I enjoyed this game quite a bit. If I were to make a top 5 list of favorite hidden movement games, this game would definitely be on this list, and actually bump out some other games that I played that I have enjoyed in the past. This game does a very interesting twist on the hidden movement game by making the one player being the one whose movements are in the open, where the many players are the ones who have to hide their movements. I love that. I love the tactics. I love the strategy of that. I love the theme that's behind the game. I love the story that's behind the game. I love the gameplay and the variety you get from all the city event cards, the multiple amounts of replay based on the different amount of heroes that are available in the game, and the fact that this is a game that you are going to play multiple times, find multiple strategies, multiple tactics, and you're not going to get bored of the game very quickly, because it has enough built-in mechanics to play the game differently every single time, while you can still focus on the main strategies, the main tactics, and the main way to play the game. Hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you enjoyed this video series. If you have any comments or questions, make sure to leave them down in the YouTube comments down below. I'll definitely answer them as quickly as I can. You can also feel free to email me at offtheshelfboardgamereviews. That's otsbgr@gmail.com. Be sure to answer your emails as quick as I can. If you enjoy the channel, if you join the content I put out there, think about tossing a tip over in the tip jar over on Patreon. Just $1 can help me cover my costs, keep the channel growing strong, and help me bring out more content for you and all the viewers out there to enjoy all the time. If you enjoyed this video, series, click that like button, click that subscribe button. As always, thanks for watching.